Happy Friday, everybody. TGIF. You know how we do it. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Happy Friday. PBO's always struggle streaming. Shout out to Jeffrey Johnson for joining me. Shout out to Jim R. This Thursday I always do vendor assessment, risk assessment. So you might pivot to something else. If you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, just drop them in the chat. We can always pivot to another issue or the man, the myth, the legend. Shout out to Regine. Appreciate the one from Jeffrey Johnson. So let's go ahead and get it. Whew. Man, I'm glad it's Friday. Shout out to my man. Thanks for joining me. Once again, if you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, drop them in this chat. Appreciate that. TGIF trying to get it going. So let's get going. Trying to work on this new restream. They upgraded it though, so using a couple new features. So we're gonna see how good they work today. You know how we do it in this 800-53. Those are the 20 security families. So you know I always try to loop it back to that NIST, the big dog, not the CSF, the 800-53. Revision 5 to be exact. So let's keep rolling. Today we're going to talk about vendor assessment, risk assessment, and really working with a legal department. So we're going to talk about some legal terms. Let's be crystal clear. PBO is not practicing attorney. PBO is not giving legal advice. PBO work with the legal department. I've got a couple attorneys I probably have come on so we could talk about what that would look like in real life. But a lot of times when I look over vendor assessments, I find things and send them to the lawyer. We're going to look at BitSite. That's something we were looking at inside Discord. So we'll look at their DPA, which stands for Data Processing Addendum or Agreement, depending which one you're looking at. So we're going to dig into that. So this is the outdated flow that a lot of people use, trying to select a trusted vendor, perform a risk assessment in there. The contract really is where the legal part right there. Contract, negotiate signs. What do you negotiate? You negotiate terms, overflow agreements. If we get breached, how's that? How are you going to compensate us? A lot of times they want to give you fees instead of actually giving you hard dollars. Are they going to give you credit? So negotiating, what is that if you get harmed, right? If the service breakdown from an SLA perspective, you need 5 nines and they give you 2 nines and one of your federal agencies sue you because you couldn't meet your SLA. Probably a customer is going to sue you that you're doing this for, or IRS Pub 1074, or CMMC if you're doing DOD work. Once again, that's the legality, and that's kind of where you and legal work together. So that's kind of what we're going to talk on today. Oh, I just was talking about that, Jim. I was trying to find my email. Yeah, this is the day our Windows 10 support without paying $30. I put Linux Mint on the order. Yeah, I was looking for that. I was going to pay the $30. So I'm glad you reminded me, Jim. All right, I got to find my 30 so I can at least make it to 2026. I got an older computer. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I was actually looking for that. I think they sent me out an email. I could probably go in there and look and see inside my updates or something to see if I can figure out where I need to pay that $30. But once again, this is the outdated supply chain. Most people still using it, right? Get a vendor, assess it, contract. That's usually where legal comes at. Transacts, match the PO and invoice. That's usually where procurement at. We probably talk a little bit about procurement and GRC. I think legal and GRC is kind of at the top of the pyramid. And what do you need to do once again to work with the legal department? A lot of times too, I was kind of a little shocked. Legal was sending me stuff to review. I'm like, y'all legal, right? But there's a lot of IT related things that legal's not accustomed to. All right, GDPR. A lot of times that could be a legal department, but that could be GRC. BA. business associate for HIPAA, right? That's a legal document, but there's a lot of IT requirements in it. So once again, we're going to touch on that a little bit. Issues with the digital supply chain, 2.41 trillion due to cybersecurity failures, data breaches, operational failures, legacy systems in there. So that's what we're trying to. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I've seen that before, GMR. Oh, your framework. Yeah, we can definitely talk. If you want to come up, we can actually talk about that if you want to. If you got a little time today, we could definitely cut that up. So let's kind of get into it. Governance, risk, and compliance, a framework for aligning. That's what we do. Operational, ethically within the law. So that's why I put that in there. So operates ethically and within the law for compliance. Mass risk, informed decisions of risk, maintains accountability and oversight. That's the governance, right? But if you look at the top, within the law. Some of the common frameworks related to GRC at the top, my favorite, NIST 800-53. 800-171 is CMMC with a couple controls. A lot of people love the CSF, especially if you are a smaller company. FedRAMP is really NIST 800-53 in the cloud. FISMA is the DoD version of 853. Pub 1075 sits on top of 53. Graham Leach Bliley Act. If you do a lot of banking, I worked in the banking and loan and finance industry, so we were doing a lot of glib. HIPAA and high trust, right? That's the health and hospitals. GPR. SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley for financial reporting. Shout out to my man Jaime. PCI DSS for the credit card payments. CMMC is the new for defense supply chain. I ain't gonna say it's new. It's been out probably for 4 or 5 years where they were talking about it. Then I think last year they made it go live, right? And now I think they've been refining it. I think they're giving people 5 or 6 years to become compliant with it. Meaning I think you can get grandfathered in for that. So, but really, if you look at all of those really are legal requirements you have if you're doing business with the federal government. Why do I tell it's a legal requirement? If you don't make it, they could take your work away, or you could get sued with a big fine. So to me, that makes it a legal requirement. Let's talk about a couple legal issues in GRC. Legal exposure arises when organizations fail to manage compliance or data responsibility. Major categories. Shout out to Space Tacos. Data privacy and protection. I definitely put that in the legal department, right? GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, GLIBA impose strict requirements on data collection, storage, processing, and breach notifications. Violations can lead to civil penalties, class action lawsuits, and criminal liabilities. Negligent data handling or breach concealment, meaning you have a breach and you don't tell people, right? I ain't gonna say a lot, a few companies did that and got caught. TGI Space Tacos, I appreciate that. Happy Friday to everybody. Space Tacos checking in. So, contractual and third-party obligation. Many laws require organizations to extend compliance requirements through contracts. The new one I see a lot is data processing agreements, DPAs, and we're going to drill in that. Then we're going to look into a DPA. We were doing one inside Discord for, I think it was BitSite. So I've got their DPA. We're going to look on at the end and just kind of perusing and see what's in the DPA. Subcontractor clause. Failure to ensure a vendor protects sensitive data can make the organization jointly liable. I mean, if I got some subs and I don't flow down my security to the subs, if the subs get me hacked, I'm responsible for the subs. So their lawsuit would definitely apply to me. Shout out to Equalizer 23. Good afternoon. So I think a lot of people miss that when you're talking about third-party agreement. Many laws require organizations to extend We call that flow down, and we'll look at that a little bit too. Compliance through contracts. Failure to ensure vendor protects sensitive data can make the organization jointly liable. So, so you're responsible for your subs. Their subs could have subs, and the company there could be a prime that hired all of us. They're going to get in trouble, right? So once again, what does that flow down looks like? And we talked about that. The visibility into your sub security. Intellectual property, misuse or leakage of IP, intellectual property, trade sequence, or licensed software through poor data handling can cause IP infringement claims or loss of competitive advantage. So if you have intellectual property like Boeing, it looked like foreign nations stole their plans to their plane. So when they was looking at other competitors, they had their designs because their IP was stolen, right? So infringement of claims or loss of competitive advantage. Breach of fiduciary or slash negligence. Executives and boards may face liability for failing to establish reasonable cybersecurity controls or governance practice, as seen in SEC enforcement cases. So when you talk about 10Ks, reporting to Wall Street, now a big thing in their 10Ks is your breach notification. Because if you get breached, that could be a couple $100 million worth of lawsuits, right? We know Equifax lost half the United States information. Their stock price got cut in half, right? That was a major event. So that's kind of where GRC, cybersecurity, and legal start flowing down into stock prices. Record retention, we were talking about that last night. Shout out to Study GRC. Record retention and e-discovery. We're talking about shredding, right? So how long do you get to keep paper records, and when you shred them, the level of shreddedness, that's not a word, right? Quarter, cross-cut, how small it should be. Should you burn it and pulp it, right? So that's kind of part of your retention. Non-compliance with retention policies or destruction of records during litigation can result in sanction or penalties for that. So we were talking about Purview inside Azure. That's their thing for. I did it for litigations, right? So you could go through and say if any of these words are in an email, any of these words in Teams, any of these words inside documents, basically lock them so they can't delete. You can actually create a package and send it to a law firm, right? So that's part of the e-discovery of that. You probably need to do a video on e-discovery. To be honest, we don't talk about e-discovery very much, or the litigation of that. Vendor risk management, focus on identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk introduced by third party that process, store, and access organizational data. So once again, when we do our vendor assessment, risk assessment for third parties, for your vendors, once again, legally, what does that look like? What are we responsible for? And really, what are the legal requirements from a GRC perspective we need to take care of? Right? I think we forget that a little bit. So let's kind of drill into that. Once again, us working with the legal department. Risk categories, you see them: security risk, compliance risk, operational risk. We're going to get there to legal risk. Inadequate contracts or violation of privacy laws. And really, once again, what are you not doing that you legally required to do? A lot of times the state could have additional legal requirements. When I was consultant for the state of Indiana, you had to do stuff with tax returns and get them turned around in 3 days. If not, you were breaking state regulatory laws. So a lot of times you have fed laws, state laws, and you can even have county and city laws that everybody's trying to put their foot in the data, I guess, to make it seem like they're more responsible. For me, though, that's a lot of requirements that are floating around that you need to get your head around. No, that's true. Legals does not mean lawful and vice versa. No, that's definitely true, right? So that is a distinction. What's up, Ty? Glad you could join me. So once again, one of the risks, we usually talk about security risk, compliance risk, operational risk, finance risk, reputational risk. but we very rarely talk about legal risk. And from my standpoint, right, the legal department's got that handled theoretically, but right, we're governance, risk, and compliance. So we got to make sure we have all the requirements that we're legally responsible for. A lot of times, the legal division or office, they're not going to be looking at the data processing agreement. They're not going to be looking at the NIST 800-53 requirements. Like if it's a breach, you got to let them know within 24 hours, right? That's really not a legal requirement. That's a GRC requirement, right? So those are some requirements we need to make sure to work with legal to make sure the development team and the business owner understand those requirements. A lot of times those requirements could cost extra money, right? So a lot of times that's what I would look for. Like we had to have another region inside AWS. We had one tenant, but they wanted to have multiple regions. They were going to put it all in one region. But from an IRS standpoint, I think legally they want you to be in two different regions. So let's keep going. Legal controls and best practices. Implement data processing agreement. That's what we're going to kind of drill down a little more. MSA is a master service agreements, which define breach notification, liability caps, and audit rights. Requires subcontractor flow down. We were talking about this. You're responsible for your subs, your subcontractors. That could be people or whole different companies. So your requirements from your contracts need to flow down in contracts to them, right? So if the prime wants the right to audit you within 48 hours, you got to make sure you can audit your subs within 48 hours, right? That requirement needs to flow down from contracts. So a lot of times those are questions when we have subs is what is our flow down? Can they meet the same security requirements we're responsible for? Right. We need encryption at 140-3. Can your subs afford to do that? Because some of that stuff is pricey. So who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for that additional cost? Who makes sure the third parties get audited? Right. We talked about ConMon, continuous monitoring. Who's monitoring your third parties, right? Or your third parties to your third parties? How do you make sure that's secure? A lot of times you put it on your subs to be responsible for their subs, but if they get them hacked, you gonna be in the news, not them. So once again, so what does those subcontract flow downs look like? Through your whole organization. We were talking about this, conduct a periodic assessment and require independent auditors. SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 2701, PCI DS, IRS Pub 1075, FISMA. So there's a ton of periodic assessments, but how do you get that information to make sure your chain of products are secure for the work you're doing? And the crazy thing is sometimes I'm a sub and I'm talking to the prime and the prime doesn't have their stuff together, right? So once again, what does that flow to? And what are you responsible for in your org? Establish a vendor risk register, document critical suppliers, inherent risk ratings, and mitigating steps. Align it with 800-161 supply chain management or ISO 2736, which is supplier relationship. Right, there's a supply chain and regular NIST. I've done a little 161. I think the one inside 53 is, for the most part, it's good for standard work. So, so once again, how are you handling your subs and reviewing your subs? So what is a data processing agreement? It's a legal binding contract between the data controller. These are actually GDPR terms, which I don't like, but those are quite standard now in DPA terms. Shout out to my man Marvin for joining us. I appreciate you. Good day. Good day, sir. Let's go. DPA, legally binding contract between a data controller, the organization that determines why and how the data is processed, and the data processor, the vendor or third party that processes data on the controller's behalf. The DPA ensures that vendors handle personal or sensitive data in compliance with applicable privacy laws, bringing GDPR, GLPA, HIPAA, CPA, defines the rights and obligations, security standards both parties must follow. This is an example scenario. Financial institution, controller, contracts with AWS slash Azure or payroll vendor processor. The DPA defines how the vendors must safeguard their personal financial data, report breaches, and comply with retention requirements. So the financial institution, as the bank says, we're following this 800-53. We want our breach notification to be within 24 hours. Right. So you need to reach out to AWS to see if they can accommodate that. A lot of times they will, you just got to pay them a little more money. Right. But two, they actually have their government cloud, which in AWS and Azure. And if you're in their gov cloud, those requirements are built in because they know they're dealing with government requirements. The two, is we talked about that, is usually if you're an institute or you're a consultant, you need to come up with those requirements, personal financial data, report breaches, comply. You need to come up with those requirements to give to your cloud architect, your cloud engineer, your database administrator, right? And people build an environment. So that's one thing I do when people bring me on site, usually to do IRS work. These are the requirements you need to build. Everybody know I love AWS. These are the AWS. Today is the shoddy facts. So what requirements does that agency need? If you're doing IRS work or CMMC work, or when they're building their tenant, they're using this database, this operating system. I'm a Linux guy. So this Linux operating, what are the checks? Which are the requirements, the legal requirements we need to do to make sure we're compliant to do that federal work? So what is that? Watch them make them in. Some of the legal and foundation drivers. GDPR, and when we were going through that, a lot of that was GDPR language, right? GDPR mandates the controller only to engage in processors providing sufficient guarantees to meet privacy and security requirements. That's the article for that. GLIBA, I used to do a lot of financial work in the loan industry, so we would do a lot of GLBA. And you see right there, DPA or equivalent contracts must specify how the vendor protects customer financial data, breach notification procedures, and comply with the FCC and the FERC CyberSecurity. Those are federal agencies that come out and do assessments on your org. Or if you get breached, they're the one that's going to fine you, right? So those are some of the agencies. Once again, we're just touching on it. Just kind of want to get everybody understanding how we work with legal. I work with a lot of legal departments in my time. And once again, I'm trying to bring a couple attorneys on so we can kind of really talk about that. And we had a nice report. They would send stuff to me. I would send stuff with them. They would outline stuff for me to review. Once again, from a GRC perspective, lawyers not really going to dig into the CMMC cybersecurity requirements, right? So that'll be GRC along with the security team to kind of get those requirements together. A lot of times I give those requirements, right? Once again, I do a lot of IRS work, so I know those with my eyes closed. Probably in 2026, I probably dig a little more in CMMC. That seems to be getting a lot hotter. A lot of people know I got a couple AWS certs, so I feel comfortable when I'm talking about security requirements, governance requirements, risk compliance, and compliance requirements inside AWS. How do you set it up? Encryption, fail over to a different region, different AZ, different data centers, local hosts. So once again, what does that look like when you give those requirements to this? I've given them the CTOs, cloud engineers, programming departments. Sometimes they tell you pound sand. They don't want to change it. We were talking about that in the Discord where somebody didn't want to make those changes, right? So That's cool with me. Then we won't get our ATO. We won't be able to do government work, and we all gonna get laid off. So you can pick what you want to do. Shout out to my man for joining me. I am not. I haven't went to a. I haven't went to a conference in probably 20 years, man. I might start going. I have not went to. The cool thing now is with YouTube and after 4 or 5 months, they usually put a lot of the conference online now, so you can get that knowledge. So I really enjoy that. I don't know if I like traveling as much as I used to, man. I enjoy my own bed. PBO getting old, man. So once again, let's talk about these are some of the common governance and privacy requirements that legal really deal with. I'm trying to reach out. When I worked at the big company, they actually had a HIPAA lawyer. She was super good. So I usually once again work with her. I would send her stuff, and she'd be like, "Yeah, we're not gonna worry about that." But now, so usually that the HIPAA attorneys, and work for the big company, the privacy director was actually an attorney, so we had great conversations. CCPA and CPRA, under the California Privacy Rights Act, business must include a DPA-like provision when sharing personal data with service providers or contractors, ensuring limited use, retention, and sale restrictions. Right, they can't sell your data. Once again, we were doing a vendor assessment inside Discord. So for BitSite, so I actually pulled up their DPA. So we're actually gonna roll through that. Shout out to my man Larry. I see him on the short reel. Shout out to Convo Courses, putting me and him. I seen us about 10 times. Thought it's working, man. I wish, man. I wish. PBO getting old, man. He's slowing it down a little bit, but I appreciate it. Definitely one of the top PMs on YouTube. We got to get Larry to get his channel up and going. Larry, you got a channel? I'm just throwing that out. Larry, you got a YouTube channel? If anybody got a YouTube channel, just drop it in the chat. I just cut and paste this out. This is the DPA at a high level, the sections and the description of it. These are standard sections when you talk about government. Purpose and scope. Define the nature and processing of HR. Define the categories and subjects. Specify whose data and what type of data are involved. Roles and responsibilities. Security measures. Outline technical and organizational controls required to protect data. Sub-processor management, I always call that the subcontractors, require approval and flow down of security requirements to any subcontractors. Breach notification, define the notification, timeframes, and procedures. Data subject rights, ensure processors assist in fulfilling deletions or assess requests. Processors should promptly assist the controller with DSR requirements. So if you want to delete something, keep something, or modify them inside GDPR, you got to make that happen. In the United States, you say you want to delete your data, Facebook don't delete it. They just mark it for delete. So they don't really delete it, right? Yeah, that always counts. Space Tacos, of course. I'm in your Discord sometimes. So shout out to Space Tacos. Go check hers out. See who was calling me. Oh, they have to wait. But once again, these are the and we're gonna dig into their audit and compliance, right? Yeah, one of my big things, my boss always wanted, we need the right to audit. So if we feel like your organization is doing something fishy or some data happens or we do a scan and it doesn't come back right, we have the right to come on site and audit you within 48 hours. So my boss was real big on right to audit. So but once again, when I work for the Fortune 500 company, we could just roll up on you. We can pull up on you, right? So that was real big. So that's something I look for. Even if it's a little company, I want the right to audit. You're not going to run up in AWS, though. Shout out to AWS. They ain't going to let you just run up in their data center. But shout out to them, though. They got every attestation, GDPR, CCPA, NIST, FISMA. So they have all that assessed, and they get assessed every year. And you can download that assessment, look at their findings at a certain level. Liability and indemnity. I always talk about this. When we talked about BitSite, shout out to Steph, is if they got you hacked, they just told you to pound sand. They weren't going to do anything, right? So I always looked, allocate legal responsibility and financial exposure. if a company gets us hacked, what's our remedy? Meaning they're gonna give us credit, they're gonna how much money they're gonna pay us, or how they're gonna get us back whole if they get us hacked, right? A lot of companies now you don't even realize you click through pound sand if they get you hacked, and that was BitSite. You just responsible for that, which I think is crap. You get me hacked, so yeah, that's the one we looked at earlier. Talked about once again BIA, which is the Business Associate Agreement for HIPAA and High Trust. Function as specific DPA for healthcare. CCP and CRA under the California Privacy and Service Provider Contractors. Those are the agreements. If you have California customers, you have additional requirements you need to be aware of, or you could be getting sued by the state of Cali, right? So once again, you need to understand that. Here's some of the common documents we look at from a risk assessment, vendor assessment with GRC. Shout out to Space Taco putting work. I know you're busy, man, Larry. No channel for me, not me. I will still try to level up my knowledge before I jump in online. People in the front. No, I agree. I think people overestimate and they shouldn't call you out. And for me, I think people can start channels to learn. But you're right, man. People will call you out and try to embarrass you on YouTube, man. People try to dox you and everything else, man. Shout out to my man Jim R for joining me. How are you doing today?
Hey, good. Can you hear me?
You're crystal clear, man.
Unbelievable. I didn't Zoom today, by golly.
That's it. Yeah, sometimes when you switch between Zoom and Teams and Google, then you get on Discord, man. It's a lot of settings be getting reset.
Well, I do five and WebEx and something else, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's always Zoom.
yeah.
It's always Zoom.
Yeah, I was doing WebEx with Teams, and it was giving me problems, man. I was just constantly struggling with those two. It was a weird company. They didn't want to do Teams for some legal restrictions, so it was interesting. So I was missing meetings and everything. I was getting in trouble, man. I couldn't get those two to collaborate. You want to chime on anything?
Oh, it's funny you're talking about the legal aspects of it, and it's either I've had people who are really good that focused on cyber issues from a law perspective, a legal perspective, or else they were just like, oh, okay, they're the organization's general attorney, and they don't they. Some can catch up pretty quickly if you spend some time with them, but a lot of them just don't get it. They when they think of risk, they're thinking of legal risk,
Mm-hmm.
for their contract law and not being sued, etc. And they really don't see it unless, oh, okay, there's an action because of some type of a breach or a non-regulatory, a compliance function or something. But it's really hard for a lot of them to understand until it actually, bites them in the ass.
No, I think I actually no, you're right. When I worked at the state, they had a pretty good legal team. When I went to the Fortune 500 company, they did this for real. So their legal department was outstanding. I got a lot better working with those guys. But you're right, most legal, especially from smaller companies, because most times they're outsourcing it. They don't really have in-house legal people to begin with. So, like you said, you get these law firms on. It's like, dude, we're talking cyber risk, not legal risk, right? There's a delineation, and I think a lot of smaller companies struggle with that.
Oh, absolutely. Or else, when some of these mid-size firms, they'll get someone junior, almost like an apprentice, out of law school, and they'll say, oh, okay, you handle cyber risk, or contract law and stuff, some of the easier stuff, and some turn out to be really good though. And then if it rates up to a certain level, a certain dollar amount, then the heavy hitters of the outside contracted support will get involved. But yeah, one thing I was talking about, I mentioned earlier the GRC. A lot of people ask, what the hell is GRC? Where does it fit in the organization? And it's different if you're a large organization or a mid-tier or a small agency. And then it's like, well, I look at GRC. Well, is that really complete, right? Where's the controls? Oh, it kind of fits in there. And if you deal with a financial institution or a bank, their big thing is third party risk management, boy, and they'll have a whole section thrown in there. But I'm like, well, this is a subset of enterprise risk and a risk management strategy with IT risk. And yet they'll take this section and they'll put it over here with contracts and kind of the law. And it's really hard because you're almost like shut out of that until there's some problems. And they blame the cyber team or the CISO or. So it just depends. So I kind of made a framework and I said, what can we throw into that's more complete, right? That's something you can sell clients or kind of like, orientate people on. So I came up with the GRC. Added C was for controls, because controls kind of gets kicked to the curb and just kind of grabbed in there to the cybersecurity people, or else the enterprise risk people. But I thought, you have to build, when you build out a program, you have to have all of your policy documents, your standards, but then you have to build your architecture and engineering practices and processes, and then you have to assign your controls and your ownership of all of that stuff. And then I added kind of the dash TPRM, because to me that's kind of one of these weird kind of things. Where does it fall within an organization? Some it's like, boy, you got a third-party risk management team, it's so big, and really it's growing. And then others it falls under general risk or the CISO. So I struggle with that as well. So I just wanted to bring that up.
No, I think that's 100% correct. And I think you touched on it. It really depends on the size. Like when I worked for the Fortune 500 company, we had 5 departments working on it. I worked at the state. I did all that myself. So it depends on the size. But 2 is, and I think you brought up another good point, is realizing that you have that risk and you need to be doing it somewhere, right?
Well,
I think.
That's like a lot of these issues when you deal with cybersecurity and privacy. Just in general, the privacy track tends to go to people who are lawyers, or the legal track. And a lot of times, I'll be dealing with issues, and depending on who the legal team is or the executive team, a lot of these things will be thrown on me. And it's like, oh, okay, just don't tell them you're a lawyer, or don't represent yourself as a lawyer. And I said, oh, I got to take the name CyberSecurity Esquire out of my name. I imagine, but a lot of these things, it's like, and you don't know necessarily. You're dealing with issues, then it's like, oh, I got to step back here and get legal advice on these issues, because you can get yourself in trouble. And but then a lot of times the business will just say, oh, just this is a cyber issue, or this is a risk issue. And then that's where you got to document and everything, just like with risk, right? The CISO, I used to think, well, in a DoD, it's like, okay, the CISO is responsible for this risk, right? But in a commercial environment, it's like, CISO, I want nothing, right? You have the business assume the risk, and you're the advisor, right? If they want to jump off of a cliff, we want to AI cloud everything. Okay, do you have any safeguards in place? No, but we got to do it because everyone else is doing it. Fine. Here's the recommended course of action. Here's what I assess as the risk. You assume it, not me. And the same thing, from a legal perspective. It's like, if I'm going down a rabbit hole where I feel like, this is not something I should be involved with, this is a business issue, is I raise the red flag. And if they say, you run with it, Jim, and I say, okay, I'm going to run with it, when I don't hold me accountable for this. And I'm very, very specific about that.
No, we talked about documenting everything. And 2, and like, we'll shout out to Steph, we were doing that big site inside Discord, and I highlighted a lot of small risks, and I told her, these are legal risks. I'm not going to try to practice being an attorney. That's how you get in trouble. So I'm like, you need to send this to your legal MSP, your legal staff, or whoever, because I'm not going to do it. And 2, if it comes to me, that's going to be a business decision. That, like you said, I'll send that to the business before I make that decision. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, but PBO, you're working for the IRS. You've got all your backdoor widgets to funnel off money there. You're living high off the hog. No,
no, PBO
no.
ain't embezzling. No, I know. I never mess with the RNS. Let me read this quick slide real quick, Jim.
Sure.
Master service agreement defines your general purpose. So a lot of times procurement and legal, that's really what they're working on. And really, if it's not in the master service agreement, it's really not part of that process, right? So a lot of times, if I really want something from a cybersecurity perspective, I'm gonna make sure it's linked into the master agreement or the service level agreement, because that's stuff people's got to sign off on. So if you do security and it's not in the master service agreement, they really don't have to do it, which kind of shocked me when I figured that out. I'm like, what? Right? So because that's the thing people sign off on, and those are the requirements we're going to do. Now, a lot of times in the master service agreement, it's going to reference the service level agreement, right? This is the master. We need to do these service level agreements. So the master agreement, like, what's your breach notification? What's your 4 nines? Do you have a DR? If you go down, you got to be up within 6 hours. All those are service level agreements, right? So those, we were talking about those. We're going to make those KPIs, KPRs, things we're going to be responsible for if we're that company. We talked a little bit about BAAs, sector-specific data processing agreement under HIPAA and high trust. The non-disclosure agreements, I sign these like water, protects confidential information, not necessarily personal data. So why would I sign NDAs when I review companies? They're telling me their secrets. They're telling me their findings. They're telling me their architecture. I usually know how they're doing authorization, authentication, because us as a GRC team, or even as a security team, we're going to give them our 120-word questionnaire. You know, 120 questionnaire. You know, are you using encryption? Are you doing APIs? Are you blah blah blah? So that's going to tell you some of the weaknesses of their org. So they want to make sure you can't disclose that to another organization. So that's where you get the non-disclosure agreement. The crazy thing, I was getting so many of them, I didn't sign them. I send them over to our legal department to make sure I'm not signing something that's going to get us in trouble. 9 times out of 10, it's not, but probably 15 years ago, I almost signed something that read kind of funny. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not. Before I sign an NDA, I'm sending that to our legal department. Shout out to Equalizer 23. Do you recommend the GRC analyst? Oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be working with Dr. Ozier and doing my own course. So I want to be transparent. I do love that course. I've taken bits and pieces of it. I'm supposed to be coming out with my own course, but Space Tacos will tell you I'm about 4 months late. So I've been working on that right now and trying to get my own course out there. So I want to be transparent. I'm in the Dr. Ozier Teaching Academy. Most people know that I taught 10 years at a community college in the state of Indiana that had 30,000 students. I taught Intro to Information Security. I taught business law, which is weird, and I taught red team. Hacking a little bit, which I didn't really like that course. And I taught a high-level GRC course. So I taught about 4 courses at the university. So I did that for 10 years. A new regime came in and we didn't get along. So PBO don't let students tell him what to do. He owed. So shout out to them. I might go back to teaching. Now they're looking for people with cloud skills. I have a couple cloud certifications. So a lot of times people want me to teach. So long story short, back to my man here. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dr. Ozier. I've been been a rough year for me. I've been just kind of grinding. So I'm supposed to get my course done. So I'm gonna release my course and just keep adding on to it. Then I was gonna do a live course once a week inside Discord, right? To make sure, since my course is gonna be new, to make sure everything's getting answered appropriately, and we do some live hands-on type stuff, especially in AWS. You can get you a free tier. We can do some GRC inside of AWS. I've taken it. Yep. Shout out to Space Taco. A lot of people loved it. Like I said, I've perused through it. And that's one reason I haven't came out with my course. I looked at it, it's like, oh, I got to put a little more work in. Mine was looking a little janky. So I gotta work on it a little more. Bit side kinds were in the main assessment tools. Okay. Yeah, we looked at BitSite. Their trust center was a little iffy. Let me know, Larry. I can give you access to the Discord where we were breaking down. I think I found about 5 or 6 things inside their Discord I really disliked. Their AI was ridiculous. If you signed their AI stuff in their trust center, you gave them worldwide access to it and trade rights to all your data. It was crazy. So yeah, BitSite was a little janky. Let's keep going. So I got a couple more slides. Once again, put any questions in there. And 2 is PBO super nice. Yeah, if you go Space Taco tell you, it's probably 4 or 5 people inside Study GRC that took it. So you can actually probably reach out into their Discord and ask their question. Let me know if that's a good idea, Space Taco. So yeah, but no, I really liked it. And once again, Space Taco, I haven't heard anything bad about it. And PBO pretty negative, get off my line type guy. But now I looked at it, I'm really patterning my class after his, so I got to put a little more work in. PBO copied some slides the same. Two, everybody know I'm a NIST 800-53. So these are the things in the DPA. We remember we were looking at their sections. So this is how they're so the data security measures. These are the controls inside NIST 800-53 that maps back to that. Access controls, incident response, data retention. So those are the controls inside 853 that maps to your DPA, right? So anytime we're doing anything in cybersecurity, if it's DPA legal, we want to be able to map that to 800-53. So when the auditors come in, these are the things they're going to be looking for in those families. And these are the things from our DPA that we can show them. I'm trying, man. Dr. Ocean was at another level, man. I'm trying to get there, Space Tacos. I'm have to have you test it for me, Space Taco. Chris did it once over. I gotta go through and update a few things. So yeah, I might have you go through it for me. It's pretty short. So once again, I'm gonna keep adding on to it and building. People using it. Facts. I need to get a check. I'm definitely this. Be very specific, Tacos. NIST 853, not CSF, not CMMC, not I'm 853. You need to put the 800 on there. But yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years, man. So that's one of my favorites. So let's look at a quick DPA. Once again, let me know if you want to time in on that, Jim. No pressure. Let's see. Oh, let's look at the DPA. Let's see if we're sharing that properly. Yeah, let's make it a little bigger for the old people, which is me. So what are we looking at? We talked about this data processing agreement. We do this in real life, right? This PBO don't just talk about it. I do this in real life. All right, so let's look at the DPA. We were talking, oh, there it is. Okay. So we're going to peruse through it. I appreciate that beta testing for me, Space Taco. So Chris took it out. I got to do he added a couple things after the fact, which I think we needed. So that's one thing kind of took a little wind out of my sails. So you want to chime anything on anything, Jim? I'm up here just pontificating.
No, I'm good.
Okay. We're
I
about
love
to look
your
at
pontificating.
Okay.
It's funny you're looking at BitSite and some of the other tools, Black Kite and all these other things, and then we had that discussion. What's a GRC management tool versus a monitoring tool?
Yeah.
So, so this is a good one. I've used BitSite before.
Yeah, they had a few things I just didn't like was inside their DPA and their agreement. So, but like I said, I don't think they're alone at that. I think a lot of people click through and don't really read it like they should. But I think once again that's the top of the pyramid type when you're talking about data processing and risk assessment. So,
Hey, a quick question. How often do you go through, and it's like you get people, it's like I understand the op tempo, and it's like, oh, okay, as long as they got the SOC 2, type 2, they're happy. All right. But I had this discussion with a friend of mine, and it's like, man, it's like, oh, okay, that's like a minimum. It's a requirement, right? It doesn't mean you're secure. And how often do you get pushback with vendors? It's like, okay, you need to actually give me some more, right? We need to see some scan reports, some run some sys benchmark tests or do something. How often do you get a pushback? And it's a time thing too, because there's sometimes it's like, oh, okay, these people have a good reputation. Man, I've got 12 packages in the queue. I just don't have time. If we got a SOC 2, it's good. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Well, NIST wants us to redo a risk assessment at least yearly. But like you said, it's weird. When I work for the small company, I get a ton of pushback. When I work for the Fortune 500 company, and we talking about spending $1 million, I get all the documentation I want. Right? So,
Oh yeah.
So really, and two, So the size of the company you work for, the maturity of the company, and two is what requirements. So if you're doing the IRS or NIST or FISMA, they know you have a federal requirement to do that type of assessment. So they're usually a little forthcoming. And I think shout out to Steph and those. I think that's where everybody's going to the trust center because you can get the majority of your documents once you sign an NDA. It's kind of like a smorgasbord, right? It's self-serve, right? So you can kind of get your own thing. So I think that's one reason people are moving to trust center because once you do the NDA and you're gonna spend so much money, we believe you're a real client, right? Then you get to their trust center, then you can get probably 98% of their documents. Now, when I start asking for specific findings, people start getting a little nervous, right? Right? You
Yeah.
got cat ones. What's your compensated controls for that? So,
Yeah, and the thing I'd get with smaller companies, it's like, what's a good example? It's what if you had the third party risk folks is they go through the questionnaires as long as okay you're answering the questionnaires correctly. But me, it's like okay, let's see your documentation, right? Okay, I'm actually going to read your incident response. Oh, by the way, I'm actually going to call and talk to your incident response planner. And then you find out that these people aren't doing anything that they advertise that they're doing. They're basically, it's okay, you're a 4-month-old company. How could you be doing these very, very mature things you're discussing? Have you ever done any of them? And then finally they'll fess up and they'll say, oh, okay, well, basically we bought a policy toolkit and we changed some verbiage here. So, if a company does that to me, if they're upright and they say, hey, we got some problems here, but we're addressing them and we're moving forward, but at least we know about them, I'm going to cut them some slack and say, hey, thank you for your candor and not lying your ass off to me. Where if they pass off like, hey, we're this world class, and then it's basically two guys sitting in a broom closet, as their security department, I'm just going to say, that's it. You lie to me, you're not getting our money. You're not going to be a vendor for us.
Yeah, the good thing a lot of times is since I work for a big company and we have federal work, we usually only go on for the big dogs, right? We're gonna do Oracle or Microsoft, and so they're gonna have all of them. They're gonna have all that paperwork you need. So when
Yeah.
I was working for the big, we very rarely deal with anybody that wasn't in business at least a decade. So that's
Well, yeah, I learned that being at HHS when I do pushback for all of these tens and hundreds of millions of dollars being spent. And then I'd say, well, you realize you work for us, right? And that was just a realization, Big Pharma was running the show and they'd make a call and approve that or you're,
oh, oh,
which sucks. So hopefully we get out of that model.
oh yeah, I've got that. Or I mean, to be honest, I don't mind that. Sometimes we had a couple of smaller vendors, and the CFO really liked them, and the president said, "Hey, we need to get this through." Okay, but a lot of times the company wants the money, so they like, "Oh yeah, we'll do that," or "What about this?" or "You need to implement this." So yeah, I've been told to make that happen. Like,
Yeah.
so hey, you let me know, I'll make that happen. Let's look at this quick BitSite, their data processing agreement. So a lot of times when I do reviews, you're gonna be this is what you're gonna start with their data processing agreement. And we looked at there, it tells you the DPAs between BitSite and the customer, which is you, the effective date. We looked at the sections of it, so we'll hit a couple of those sections. Applicable data protection laws, you see that right there. CCPA, a lot of people does Cali. I see Colorado in there, European. A lot of times, we don't have European customers. So what does that mean, right? So, but I like when they say, well, we still going to do CCPA or GDPR even if you don't have European customers. These are the controls we're using on site. I love that because GDPR is a heavy lift. So if you want to lift it, I'm gonna let you lift it, right? So I'm usually cool with that. And once again, BitSite privacy law. I like this because they're linking their privacy policy to the DPA, right? So now if they're changing their privacy, it's linked inside of DPA. So it's kind of more of a requirement. Let's see. Data subject, what does that mean? It means a user or a vendor assessment. Once again, European data law. So the question to me is, does that still a requirement even if I don't have European customers? So personal data. So you want to make sure the definitions of some of these terms is what you want them to be for your company. Right. So services, they talked about what services mean. Carry out the services or the business which the services are a part of. Carry out any benefits, rights, or obligations. Maintains records related to the service. Parties' obligations. To extent information is disclosed, customer to bid site in connection with the performance of personal data. Once again, they have CCPA in here. Cross-border transfer of personal data. That's usually GDPR, moving from Europe to Ireland. So they have specific requirements when you do that. Since I usually do Fed work, 99% of our stuff is going to be on Konos. It's not leaving the United States. Once again, they have their information security standards linked to their DPA. I actually link to that. We'll look at that page next and go through it real quick. But once again, those are DPA, some of the terms you need to look at DPA. You want to chime in on any of that, Jim? Let's say I'm just kind of flowing through it.
No, sir, you're doing a fantastic job. Kudos.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, the best part is sitting in on these is you get to lead them and tell everybody what they need to know. I just get to chime in from the cheap seats here.
It's all good. It's all good. So we're gonna look at their let's see, their information security standards, right? So that's kind of what a trust center is really when you do it. We're looking at their DPA, pulling out the trust center. We're gonna look at their information standards. We will look at their privacy standards. We will look specifically, I think Larry brought that up. What is your breach notification? A lot of times they say stuff where it's a legal kind of term I don't like. Best practices or best of breed. I like to say we need breach notification within 72 hours, right? So a lot of times I like to put quantitative numbers on some of that stuff that's kind of squishy. So once again, we're going to flow through the security one. Then we're just going to take a couple more questions and wrap it up. And I think this is what Jim was bringing up. In their security requirements, shout out to Steph. I told her I like this. They have the SAE SOC 2 Type 2. They have the ISO 27001. They have the Cloud Security Alliance standards. They get assessed annually on it. So from that standpoint, from BidSite, I really like that. So for me, a lot of times is you're going to make sure you keep your SOC 2 Type 2 and have it assessed annually, right? So that means your policies and procedures got to be to a certain level. You got to have breach notification. I think SOC 2 Type 2, they look at your DR site. SOC 2 Type 2, a lot of times you got to get them to sign off on what's the scope. A lot of times you can leave off a few things in the SOC 2 Type 2, but generally that's pretty good. If you're going to do all three of those and get those assessed annually, and I can reach out and get the attestation to that, a lot of times the attestation is going to tell you what their findings are. So for me, when I saw that, shout out to Steph, I thought that was a good sign from BidSite. Once again, they had their these attestations. Once again, SA 16, SOC 2 Type 2. They had the STAR, which is a Cloud Security Alliance. I really like that. So once again, from security information and vendor assessment, I like those. They added some warranties here. It's been implemented, measure security. The system's monitored 24/7. So they had their standard warranties of security of stuff they need to be doing. They got role-based security. So those are kind of standard stuff for a big company. I kind of peruse through because that's low-hanging fruit. And I think Jim brought up, that's when you start to need to be asking some nuanced questions and dig a little deeper, right? Security incidents. Should a security incident occur? BidSite shall notify affected customer. I hate this term, without undue delay. That's usually what I see inside there. But they actually put some quantitative numbers. No later than 72 hours after becomes aware of the security incidents, according with BidSite incident response policy and applicable regulations. Notification will be in written email, would be acceptable form of writing. BIT shall provide customers with an interim written status report within 48 hours of the request. Upon a request, BitSight shall coordinate the scheduling of a post-mortem review with the customer's incident coordinator. I really like that, right? After the end, let's talk about what went wrong. I think Jim brought that up. What could we do and what can we put in place? Then two, since it happens to your sub, if it didn't make it up to you, what things do you need to put in place so that type of breach wouldn't happen to you? And a lot of times when you do post-mortem, they're gonna give you exactly what happened. A lot of times when you read stuff, they're vague, right? When you do post-mortem, they tell you exactly what happened. I like this too. They do their vulnerability and penetration test at least once yearly. Shout out to my man Ty. So get in there and kind of figure out, get your penetration test. Because in NIST 800-53, you have to have an on-site test every 3 years. Then we talk about the standard physical environment controls, talking about cloud. Once again, they're talking about the ISO 2701. Talking about a lot of times it's just shared responsibility. That's actually going to be AWS and Azure's requirements, but they're going to knock that out. Big site corporate offices, what they're doing. Third party assessment. So how they're taking care of their third party vendors. We talked about that. So that once again, they tell you how they're handling that. If you want to do a customer assessment. So once again, that was something that was super cool that I liked from BitSight. Their DPA was pretty good. Their information security from a high level was good. And I'm going to see if I can jump in Discord and pull out the thing I really didn't like about them real quick. You want to chime in on any of that, Jim? Once again, put any questions you have into the chat, CyberSecurity Discord. We get to it. I haven't looked at it in a minute. Let's see. Once again, I don't know if I want to put her name out. They were thinking about getting BitSight, so I asked her could I do a review of that software. So once again, I went through it and just kind of did it. It didn't take me that long. I was actually eating lunch and doing a review. I think I was done about an hour. Once again, I've been doing this forever. Can I find it? Let's see, I'm trying to get the spin a while. Shout out to Study GRC. They got a lot of stuff inside their Discord. Can I find it? Oh, there it is. Here's something I didn't like. I wonder if I could share. I don't know if I want to share my screen. Here, I'm going to put it in the. Ooh, I don't know if I want to put it in the chat. Now I said it. Let's see if I can find it. So, yeah, it was. I done. So, here, I'll put it in the chat. This was from their privacy policy. Here, I'm going to put that in the chat. I think I did that last time and my chat was getting cut off. So, yeah, this is a couple things. I'll just put that in the chat. Let's see. I'll just show it. If you see that, I have it on the screen. This is from BitSight's privacy policy. It may be amended or updated from time to time at our sole discretion. So what if you updated something I don't like, right? But once again, we're talking about going through, doing a risk assessment, specifically vendor assessment, kind of what you're looking for and kind of what I'm looking for. So I just wanted to show a few things once again on that BitSight. If you go to Discord for Study GRC in there, once again, I was kind of breaking it down and just kind of shout out to Steph, showing the things in there that I thought could be an issue. Right? I don't think this is a big issue, but it's just something you need to be aware of, right? So if you can change it any time, then while I'm reviewing it, if it's something I really want, I need to take that statement and put it in the MSA, the Master Service Agreement, or in the DPA that's referenced by the Master Service Agreement, meaning it's memorialized. I hate that term. Memorialized. I hear a lot of legal terms saying, meaning, a reference to it. We signed off on it. So to change this, we both need to agree on it, right? Let's see what my man Larry said. Oh, that's GMR. Oh yeah, John Madacor has some cool stuff. I really like him. I don't follow him like I used to as much, but no, he's definitely on top of his game. He had a sim kind of course I really liked. I did a little sim with log analytics from Azure, writing a few dashboards. So I really like that. So now Madacor is definitely a cool guy. Shout
He's
out to
got
him.
some good free Q&A type things. What are they? Their packages on Anki, their decks on Anki, and also study resources. You know, it's all free stuff. You just download it from GitHub or whatnot. I can't remember.
Yeah, I need to get my GitHub going. A lot of people do the GitHub. I'm looking. Well, I'm gonna hang out a little longer. Put your questions in the chat. We just want to do a quick lunch and learn. PBO about to get some lunch and get back to it. I appreciate everybody for joining me. You know how to find me. You can easily peg me. Most people at me inside Study GRC so I can see it. PBO get a lot of stuff sometimes. Maybe getting lost. So shout out to me. I'm easily found. Shout out to me. But once again, we just want to hit on a little bit of the legal and GRC working together, what that looks like and how that flows. I appreciate you, Jim.
Yeah, I'll reach out to you when I get some tax questions.
I can't help you with that. PBO got to go find a tax guy. I don't think I did my taxes right last year, so I got to get them. I got to get them redone. So I'm definitely not the guy for that. Once again, I appreciate everybody joining me. I think I'm gonna do some gumbo. I found a nice little hole in the wall where I lived at, and people arrest me. Their special on Fridays gumbo, and it's excellent. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
getting a little cool too. So PBO moving to the gumbo, doing a little something a little different.
Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, it's funny. My dryer went out, the heating element, and I've got it. I'm replacing it like halfway right now as I speak. So I rather have gumbo instead. I'll tell you.
Nah, but you want any last words before I shut it down?
Oh, I posted out there. I next week. I think it's next Friday or Saturday. I can't remember. I gotta look. But I'm doing the CompTIA SecI AI plus beta, whatever they called it. So I'm studying for that. I got some study resource and a plan. So
Okay.
if anyone's interested in that certification, obviously, I can't tell you what the questions are, but I'll let you know how my study resources are and my opinions if anyone's interested in it.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I need to get on that CISPs on my list.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Oh, I signed up for, it's funny because I've been getting lots of calls, people like, oh, can you do AWS the security? And I'm like, yeah, PBO talks about it a lot, but I do some stuff on Azure and Purview and whatnot. But I finally got off my butt and I scheduled it out like for towards Christmas time to do my oh gosh, what is it? What is it? They're AWS associate security architect or whatever it is, solutions
Yeah,
architect.
yeah.
So yeah, so I and now I kind of regret it because it puts me on a deadline for the next few months, and I know the stuff, I've seen it, but I just don't do it. So it's like foreign to me. So now
look,
I'm gonna have to make an effort to actually do it.
look up Digital Cloud on YouTube. They have excellent content for the associate architect. So
Cool. You have that one, right?
I do have the associate architect.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and that's kind of what I
Yeah.
use for my study one. And they have great. I think it's like $100, but they have great test
Yeah.
questions, and you can do more than they have certifications for like 15 different certs. So when I bought theirs, I went and got about 2 or 3 more because I've already paid for it, and so I just went on and got. I think I got 4 AWS certs,
Yeah.
but no, I appreciate. I'm sorry about that, Larry, for the furlough. That sucks. Hopefully you get back in soon, man. Once again, I'm out. I appreciate you, Barb. Yeah, just reach out to me if y'all need anything. I'm out. Everybody have a nice weekend. I appreciate you coming up, Jim. I'm out. I gotta go run and get some lunch. I'm out. Everybody have a great weekend too.